This is part 2 of the series of videos about Ulysses Grant's life. To see part 1, click the link in the description below or above. It goes into Grant's life up to when he became Commanding General of the United States Army. That's where we'll begin. Andrew Johnson was the new President of the United States. His predecessor, Lincoln, was pro-civil rights, but Johnson wasn't. Grant didn't like this, and over the course of a couple of years, slowly broke with Johnson. Why? Apart from the difference in political viewpoints, in 1868, Johnson fired Secretary of War Edwin Stanton. Johnson offered Grant the post, and Grant accepted. What Grant didn't know was that this was a violation of the Tenure of Office Act. He could go to jail for this. The US Senate overturned Johnson's firing of Stanton, and Grant read the Tenure of Office Act and realized that he could go to jail. Grant confronted Johnson about this, resigned, then Johnson got really mad and called Grant a liar in front of the entire cabinet. This caused opinion of him among the radical Republicans, back then they were the dominant force within the Republican Party and were pro-civil rights, to increase dramatically. At this point, Grant seemed like the only viable candidate for the Republican nomination for the 1868 presidential election, and he got it. At the 1868 Republican National Convention, the delegates unanimously voted for Grant, and later that year, in the general election, he defeated Horatio Seymour in a relatively close election, on the slogan, "Let us have peace." He took office as 18th President of the United States on March 4th, 1869, resigning his post as Commanding General of the Union Army that same day. As president, the first law he signed was one that would make it possible for whoever bought Civil War bonds to redeem those bonds in exchange for gold. He was sympathetic to the situation of Native Americans and was the first president to appoint a Native American as the Commissioner for Indian Affairs. He favored peace with the Native Americans instead of war and wanted to eventually give them United States citizenship. While a general in the Civil War, he signed an order expelling all Jews from the region, Tennessee, but by the time he was president, he regretted the act and attempted to make up for it by appointing over 50 Jews to federal office. Now's a good time to go over Grant's beliefs and how they evolved over time. Grant's father was a Republican and extremely against slavery, while his father-in-law was an ardent Democrat and extremely pro-slavery, owning dozens of slaves. There's little known about Grant's political beliefs before he became president, but he built a cabin in Missouri after he resigned from the army in 1854, see the previous video, and took on a slave. Although he freed his slave because he didn't feel right forcing someone else to do work for him, his father was still disgusted by the fact that he lived in Missouri, then a state where slavery was legal. Eventually, over the course of the Civil War, he started becoming more and more pro-civil rights, and by the time he was president, he was a staunch civil rights supporter. Back to Grant's presidency. He pushed for ratification of the 15th Amendment, which allowed all males to vote regardless of race, and in 1870 he signed into law a bill that established the Department of Justice, which was used to help prosecute members of the Ku Klux Klan. He also allowed African Americans to become American citizens with the Naturalization Act in 1870. Additionally, Grant pushed further legislation to effectively wipe out the KKK, and wipe out the KKK he did. He sent federal troops to capture prominent Klan members, and using the newly formed Department of Justice, he prosecuted them. Also in 1870, he signed legislation that made Christmas a federal holiday. Next year, in 1871, he reformed the civil service, creating the United States Civil Service Commission, which would last for over a century. In March of 1872, Grant signed into law a bill that created Yellowstone National Park, the first national park in the world. 2 months later, in May of 1872, he offered amnesty to most former Confederates to try and ease tensions following the war. Now let's go on to his foreign policy. His big goal was for the United States to annex the Dominican Republic. In 1869, he drafted a proposal, along with the President of the Dominican Republic, which would, if enacted, make the Dominican Republic part of the United States. He sent a commission to the Dominican Republic. Frederick Douglass, the famous abolitionist, was on this commission, and found that the people there were in favor of joining the US. But why did Grant want to annex a tiny island in the Caribbean? Well, he believed that the Dominican Republic would be much safer for black people, so many would move there. Southerners in America, being deprived of a large portion of their labor, were supposed to see that they couldn't function without former slaves, whose civil rights they were against. They were then supposed to become pro-civil rights for black people. His proposal failed, and there was evidence of some corruption by his aides. Grant himself, however, wasn't aware of this. Another hallmark of his foreign policy is his peaceful resolution of the Alabama claims. Basically, during the Civil War, Britain built and sold ships to the Confederate Navy, and those ships wreaked havoc on Northern merchant ships, causing many to switch to British merchant ships. Some in America claimed that it lengthened the war, and it also cost America lots of revenue. Many Americans were extremely angry at Britain and wanted compensation. Some suggested seizing Canada. Grant's peaceful resolution of it, he brought in international arbiters who made Britain pay the US $15.5 million, or today about $350 million, garnered widespread acclaim. This was the beginning of the UK becoming allies with the United States. So that's Grant's first term as President of the United States. The next, and hopefully final, video will focus on his second term and later life. If you liked the video, then be sure to subscribe and like. If you didn't like the video, then press the dislike button twice, and then for good measure, press the like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching Explained. New videos every other Friday.